Today we uncover the shocking truth about UK supermarket gravy. Remember Sunday dinners at your grandmother's house? The gravy came straight from the roasting tin, rich with actual meat drippings, thickened with flour, maybe a splash of wine if she was feeling fancy. It was dark, glossy, and tasted like something that took hours to create, because it did. That was real gravy, made from real ingredients. No chemicals, no stabilizers, no palm oil shipped in from demolished rainforests, just honest meat juices transformed into something extraordinary. But walk down any supermarket aisle today and look at what's replaced it. Tubs of beige granules that are basically potato starch and palm fat held together with flavor enhancers. Products labeled beef gravy that contain 1% actual beef. 1%, the rest is maltodextrin, glucose syrup, and artificial coloring to make you think you're tasting something real. Britain's most iconic gravy brand, the one that commands 70% of the entire market, has reformulated so drastically that customers are saying it tastes like soap. They're using half a packet to get the flavor their parents got from 2 spoonfuls. And the worst part, these companies know exactly what they're doing. They've wrapped industrial powder in nostalgic marketing that makes you think you're carrying on family traditions when really you're just pouring chemicals over your roast potatoes. Premium supermarket ranges charge you triple the price for essentially the same formula as the budget version, just with fancier packaging and words like finest slapped on the label. Some of these gravies contain over 14 grams of salt per 100 grams as sold. Others have been caught with metal fragments in the production line. And nearly all of them use palm oil, contributing to environmental destruction while pretending to be part of your Sunday dinner heritage. The truth is, modern cupboard gravy isn't really gravy at all. It's a starch, oil, salt, and flavoring system sold with roast dinner nostalgia. Traditional gravy was built from pan drippings, flour, and stock. What you're buying now starts in a factory, not a roasting tin. So we've gone through the major brands currently sold in UK supermarkets and we'll expose the 9 gravy products you absolutely need to avoid. Then I'll tell you the 6 which are actually still worth buying. But first, I need your help. If this kind of investigation matters to you, if you think people deserve to know what they're actually feeding their families, then hit that hype button right now. That's how we push back against corporations who prioritize profit over ingredients. That's how we force food companies to raise their standards. Every hype, every like, every share sends a message that we're not accepting this anymore. We want real food, not factory formulas disguised as tradition. So, let's get into it. Number 9. Bisto Best Onion Gravy Granules. This one's useful because it gives us a slightly different angle from the standard palm oil story. The ingredient list here starts with potato starch, dried glucose syrup, salt, rapeseed oil, sugar, flavor enhancers, flavorings, and caramel color. Notice what's missing: actual onions anywhere near the top of that list. This is marketed as onion gravy, the kind you'd make by slowly caramelizing onions in a pan with butter, letting them go golden and sweet, then building your gravy from there. What you're actually getting is a sweetened powder system that starts more like a dessert mix than something savory. The dried glucose syrup is there to mimic that caramelized sweetness you'd get from real onions, but it's not the same thing. Not even close. And even though they've dropped palm oil this time and gone with rapeseed, they've kept the same powder lab logic. Starch first, real ingredients last. The Bisto Best range is supposed to be their premium line, the step up from regular Bisto, but when you're stepping up from terrible, slightly less terrible still isn't good. This is the gravy equivalent of putting lipstick on something that fundamentally hasn't changed. Different label, same problem. Number 8. Schwartz Roast Beef Gravy Mix. Now this gives us a packet variety instead of a tub, which is important because it shows the problem exists across different formats. Schwartz has positioned itself as a spice and seasoning expert, the brand you trust for flavor, but their gravy mix is built around modified starch, flavorings, wheat flour, skimmed milk powder, lactose, and salt. Lots of salt. We're talking 12.71 grams of salt per 100 grams as sold. When you make it up according to packet instructions, you're getting around 0.63 grams of salt per serving, which doesn't sound catastrophic until you remember this is just the gravy. Add in everything else you're eating, the roast potatoes cooked in salt, the vegetables seasoned with salt, maybe some stuffing or Yorkshire puddings, and you're stacking up sodium faster than you realize. The bigger issue with Schwartz is the expectation mismatch. People buy Schwartz thinking they're getting something more refined, more chef-like, because that's how the brand positions itself. But this isn't refined cooking. This is still a highly engineered mix designed for convenience and shelf stability, not flavor quality. It's not the palm oil sludge you get in granule tubs, but it's still not pan juice gravy. It's powder that turns into something brown and vaguely beefy when you add water. That's not cooking. That's rehydrating chemicals. Number 7. Waitrose Essential Meat Gravy Granules. This one's important because it proves the problem isn't just budget supermarkets cutting corners. Even Waitrose, the supermarket that built its reputation on quality and ethics, is selling granules that start with potato starch, palm oil, salt, wheat flour, ammonia caramel, hydrolyzed wheat protein, flavoring and emulsifier. The exact same formula logic as Tesco Value or Asda Smart Price. Waitrose shoppers often assume they're making better choices just by walking through those doors. The branding is more elegant, the store layout feels more upscale, and yes, some of their products genuinely are better. But their essential range, which is their everyday budget line, plays the same game as everyone else. They're using palm oil, which Waitrose claims to source responsibly, but responsible palm oil is still palm oil. It's still contributing to deforestation and habitat destruction, just with a certificate saying they tried to do it slightly less badly. And the hydrolyzed wheat protein, that's a flavor enhancer, a way to create savory umami depth without actually using meat. It's not dangerous, but it's a shortcut. It's the food industry's way of making you think you're tasting something rich and meaty when you're really tasting engineered protein fragments. This is the class angle that people need to understand. Premium supermarket doesn't automatically mean premium ingredients. Sometimes it just means premium marketing. Number 6. Tesco for beef gravy granules. This is the budget reality check, the product that doesn't even pretend to be fancy. It's cheap, it's functional, and the ingredient list shows you exactly why. Potato starch, palm oil, salt, wheat flour, maltodextrin, barley malt extract, flavoring, hydrolyzed maize protein, emulsifier. No romantic premium story here. No nostalgic branding. Just a very straightforward industrial formula designed to turn powder into something brown and pourable. When you make it up, you're getting 0.79 grams of salt per 100 milliliters, which is fairly standard for this category, but still significant when you're eating it as part of a full meal. The thing about Tesco for beef is that it represents what happens when cost becomes the only consideration. Every ingredient in that list was chosen because it's cheap and shelf-stable. Potato starch is cheaper than flour from premium grains. Palm oil is cheaper than butter or beef dripping. Hydrolyzed maize protein is cheaper than actual beef stock. And maltodextrin is basically edible filler, a bulking agent that adds volume without adding cost. People buy this because it's often under £1, and when you're feeding a family on a tight budget, that matters. But you're paying for the illusion of roast richness. You're paying for brown powder that vaguely tastes like beef, because chemicals are telling your brain it does. And Tesco knows that most people won't read the label, won't compare it to anything better, won't even realize there's an alternative. They'll just grab it, make it, pour it, and assume that's what gravy is now. Number 5. Morrison's The Best Beef Gravy Granules. Here's where the premium own-label scam really comes into focus. Morrison's has a tiered system like most supermarkets. You've got the budget savers range, the standard Morrison's range, and then the best, which is supposed to be their top tier, the products worth paying extra for because they're genuinely better. Except when you read the ingredients on the best beef gravy granules, they still lead with potato starch, palm oil, salt, wheat flour, ammonia caramel, maltodextrin, flavorings, and hydrolyzed maize protein. The beef content, 1%. 1% of this product is actually beef. The other 99% is powder, oil, and flavorings designed to make you think you're eating something premium. And they're charging you more for it, significantly more than the standard range, sometimes double or triple what you pay for Tesco's budget version, and you're getting the same fundamental formula. The best is a psychological trick. It makes you feel like you're making a better choice, like you're treating your family to something special. But you're not. You're buying the same powder, first beef, second formula that exists across the entire category. They've added slightly better packaging, maybe a few more herbs in the flavoring mix, and slapped a premium price tag on it. This is the supermarket equivalent of putting a fancy frame around a cheap print and calling it art. Number 4. Bisto Best Chicken Gravy Granules. Now we're getting into the Bisto Best range properly, and this is where the tiny real food core inside an engineered shell becomes impossible to ignore. The ingredient list starts with maltodextrin, potato starch, salt, palm oil, rapeseed oil, then we hit the flavor enhancers, monosodium glutamate, and disodium ribonucleotides, followed by caramel colorant flavorings. The actual chicken powder, 2%. 2% chicken in a product called chicken gravy. Let that settle in for a moment. When you buy this, you're not buying chicken gravy. You're buying a starch and oil base with a tiny whisper of chicken and a whole lot of chemicals doing the heavy lifting. Now, here's where we need to be clear about something. Monosodium glutamate, or MSG, isn't the villain it's been made out to be. The fear around it largely comes from debunked studies and some pretty uncomfortable xenophobia about Asian cooking. MSG is a naturally occurring compound, and it's actually a very effective flavor enhancer. The problem here isn't that MSG exists in the ingredients. The problem is that it has to exist because there's barely any actual chicken. If you made real chicken gravy, the kind where you use the pan drippings from a roasted bird, add some flour, some stock, maybe a splash of white wine, you wouldn't need MSG because the flavor would already be there. The chicken would give you richness and depth naturally. But Bisto Best can't do that because using real ingredients costs money, so instead they use 2% chicken powder and then boost the flavor artificially. It's not the MSG that's the issue, it's the fact that the MSG is compensating for the absence of real food. That's the scam. Number 3. Bisto Best Beef Gravy Granules. This is the flagship product for the 1% beef scandal, and it's absolutely crucial to understand what's happening here. The packaging says made with real meat juices. It's got the word best right there in the name, suggesting premium quality. The price point is higher than standard Bisto, so you'd assume you're getting something genuinely better. But flip it over and read the ingredients. Maltodextrin, potato starch, salt, vegetable oils, which are palm and rapeseed, ammonia caramel, flavor enhancers, flavorings, and then finally, buried down the list, beef extract powder at 1%. 1% in a product called beef gravy. The beef is barely on stage. It's got a cameo role in its own product. Everything else is filler, oil, and chemicals engineered to create the illusion that you're tasting something rich and meaty. And this is where the contrast between advertising and reality becomes almost offensive. Bisto built its entire brand on Sunday dinner nostalgia, on the idea that their gravy brings families together, that it's part of British tradition. The old Bisto Kids adverts showed children smelling the gravy from down the street, drawn in by this incredible aroma. But what are they actually smelling? Maltodextrin? Palm oil? Ammonia caramel? Because they're certainly not smelling beef. There isn't enough beef in there to smell. This is food engineering disguised as heritage. It's a starch delivery system with just enough beef to legally call it beef gravy, and they're charging you premium prices for it because they know the branding still works. People still trust Bisto because their parents used it, because the Bisto phrase is embedded in British culture. But the product isn't the same anymore. It's been degraded, reformulated, cost-cut into something that barely resembles what it used to be. Number 2. Knorr Beef Gravy Pot. Knorr is owned by Unilever, one of the biggest food corporations on the planet, and they've positioned this gravy pot as something special, something that tastes made from scratch. That's the exact phrase they use in their marketing, made from scratch. Except when you read what's actually in the pot, it's water, starch, salt, sugar, flavorings, beef fat at 3.5%, beef broth powder at 2.4%, yeast extract, gelling agents including locust bean gum, xanthan gum and gellan gum, emulsifier, and palm fat. Let's add up the actual beef content. 3.5% fat plus 2.4% broth powder gives us 5.9% total beef product. The other 94.1% is water, starch, and a parade of additives designed to make it look and taste like real gravy. The gelling agents are there to give it that jelly-like texture, to make it seem richer and more substantial than it actually is. The emulsifier keeps the fat and water from separating. The palm fat adds body and mouthfeel, and the flavorings do the work that actual beef stock should be doing. This is food science at its most cynical. Knorr has the resources to make genuinely good products. Unilever pulls in over £50 billion in revenue every year. They could afford to use real ingredients to make gravy that actually lives up to the made-from-scratch claim. But that would cut into profit margins, so instead they engineer a substitute, dress it up in a pot that looks more premium than a tub of granules, charge you more for it, and hope you don't read the label too carefully. The pot format is clever because it makes people think they're buying something closer to fresh, something more chef-like, but you're not. You're buying the same starch and oil system, just in a different container. Number 1. Bisto Traditional Gravy Granules. This is it. The big one. The product that commands 70% of the UK gravy market. The brand that's been in British kitchens since 1908. The gravy that became so embedded in culture that Bisto became a national catchphrase. And it's also the cleanest example of roast dinner nostalgia versus powder reality that exists on supermarket shelves today. Let's start with what the marketing tells you. Bisto Traditional. The word traditional is doing enormous work there. It suggests continuity, heritage, the same gravy your grandmother made. But traditional gravy starts in a roasting tin with actual meat drippings. You pour off most of the fat, leave the dark sticky bits on the bottom, add a spoonful of flour, let it cook out for a minute, then gradually add stock, scraping up all that flavor, letting it bubble and reduce until it's glossy and rich. That's traditional. That's how gravy was made for centuries. Bisto Traditional starts with potato starch, maltodextrin, palm fat, salt, wheat flour, then ammonia caramel for color, sugar, flavorings, and flavor enhancers. It contains 14.33 grams of salt per 100 grams as sold. When you make it up, you're still getting a fairly high salt content per serving, and everything you're tasting comes from that engineered formula. There's no meat in this at all. None. It's a vegetarian product, which is fine if that's what you want, but it's being sold as traditional British gravy, which historically was always meat-based. And here's where it gets even worse. Long-time Bisto users have started noticing the product has changed. Reviews from 2024 and 2025 are full of complaints. People saying it tastes like soap. People saying they need to use half a packet to get the thickness and flavor they used to get from a few spoonfuls. One customer in New Zealand said they had to throw away an entire cottage pie because the gravy tasted so chemically they couldn't eat it. Multiple UK customers report the flavor has become weaker, more artificial, less like the Bisto they remember. What happened? Bisto reformulated. They changed suppliers, adjusted ingredient ratios, tweaked the formula to save costs and improve shelf life, and in doing so, they degraded the product. But they kept the traditional branding. They kept the nostalgic advertising. They kept the Bisto kids imagery that makes people think of Sunday dinners and family gatherings. The emotional connection is still there, but the product behind it has been quietly hollowed out. This is the ultimate betrayal, because Bisto didn't just sell gravy. They sold the idea of British home cooking, of family tradition, of something warm and comforting that connected generations. And now they're selling potato starch and palm fat with just enough flavor enhancers to trick your brain into thinking it tastes like the real thing. They've convinced an entire nation that brown powder mixed with water is what gravy is, and people don't even question it anymore because Bisto has been there their whole lives. But it's not the same product. It's not even close. The original Bisto from 1908 was meant to enhance gravy you'd already made, to add a bit more flavor and color to real meat drippings. It was never supposed to replace the gravy entirely. Somewhere along the way, convenience became the priority, and actual ingredients became optional. So where does that leave you if you still want the convenience of shop-bought gravy, but you don't want to pour chemicals over your dinner? The good news is, there are options, and they're not even that hard to find. You just have to look past the granules and powders and into the chilled section. The gravies that come in bottles or pouches, the ones that need to be kept cold, are almost always closer to real gravy, because they're built on stock and actual ingredients rather than starch and oil. They're not perfect. Most of them are still fairly salty because that's how gravy works when you're trying to add flavor to a roast dinner. But the ingredient lists look like food instead of chemistry experiments, and that matters. First, Tesco Finest Beef and Red Wine Gravy. This comes in a 300-gram pot, and it's a completely different animal from the granules we've been talking about. The ingredients are water, beef juice at 16%, onion, Merlot red wine at 4.5%, cornstarch to thicken it, tomato paste, red currant mushroom stock, and then your usual seasonings. The salt content is 0.69 grams per 100 grams, which is reasonable for a gravy. What makes this one good is that you can actually see the ingredients doing their jobs. The beef juice gives you richness. The red wine adds depth and a slight acidity that balances the fat. The onion and mushroom stock build savory layers. This is what gravy is supposed to taste like, not because it's been engineered to taste that way, but because it's made from things that naturally taste good together. It's not homemade, but it's a hell of a lot closer than anything that comes in granule form. Second, Tesco Finest Beef Gravy in the 350 milliliter bottle. This one's even better in terms of ingredients. You've got water, onion corn flour, beef dripping, yeast extract, carrot wheat flour, beef fat Merlot red wine, beef extract, and then thyme, bay leaf, rosemary. Actual herbs, actual aromatics. This reads like a recipe, not a factory formula. The salt content is 0.9 grams per 100 milliliters, which is slightly higher than the previous one, but still well within acceptable range. The beef dripping is key here because that's traditional. That's what your grandmother would have used. When you roast beef, the fat renders out and collects in the pan, and that fat is liquid gold for gravy making. It carries flavor in a way that vegetable oils just don't. Tesco Finest has included it because they're actually trying to replicate proper gravy, and it shows. This is one of the strongest supermarket options for people who want something that resembles Sunday roast gravy without having to make it from scratch. Third, Waitrose beef gravy in the 300-gram pot. The main ingredients here are water, beef stock at 48%, corn flour, red wine at 4%, beef stock oil, demerara sugar, sea salt, balsamic vinegar, yeast extract, and thyme. That beef stock percentage is doing serious work. 48% means nearly half this product is actual beef stock, which is exactly what you want. The red wine and balsamic vinegar add complexity and acidity. The demerara sugar balances it out with a touch of sweetness. The salt content is 1.13 grams per 100 grams, which is higher than some of the others, so this is more of a use-sparingly product rather than an everyday one. But the ingredients are recognizable and honest. This is what better but not perfect looks like. It's not a health food, but it's real food, And that's the distinction that matters. Fourth, Marks & Spencer beef gravy. This is where mainstream supermarket options start to get really solid. The ingredients are roast beef stock at 84%, corn flour, red wine, onions, carrots, beef fat, yeast extract, thyme and black pepper. 84% roast beef stock. That's higher than almost anything else on the market. The salt content is 0.75 grams per 100 grams, which is actually very reasonable for a ready-made gravy. This is the product you buy when you want something that tastes homemade, but you don't have the time or the pan drippings to make it yourself. Marks & Spencer has always positioned itself as slightly more premium than the big four supermarkets, and in this case, they've actually delivered on that promise. The ingredient list looks like something you'd write down if you were explaining how to make gravy to someone. Stock, thickener, aromatics, fat seasoning, that's it. No mystery chemicals, no palm oil, no hydrolyzed proteins. Just food. Fifth, Marks & Spencer Collection Beef Gravy. This is the indulgent version, the one you'd buy for a special occasion rather than a regular Tuesday dinner. The ingredients are water, roast beef stock, red wine at 7%, onions, beef fat, corn flour, butter, balsamic vinegar, and black pepper. Notice the butter. That's a luxury ingredient in ready-made gravy, and it makes a difference to the richness and mouthfeel. The red wine percentage is higher here too, which gives it more depth and complexity. The downside is the salt content sits at 1.5 grams per 100 grams, which is fairly high. This isn't something you'd want to use every week, but for Christmas dinner or a birthday roast, it's a genuinely premium option. The important thing is that premium here actually means better ingredients, not just better packaging. You're paying more because there's butter and higher quality stock, not because they've added the word collection to the label. Sixth, Waitrose #1 Beef and Bone Marrow Gravy. This is the gold standard. This is what supermarket gravy can be when a company actually commits to doing it properly. The ingredients are roast beef bone stock at 66%, Cabernet Sauvignon at 9%, water, corn flour, bone marrow at 3%, stock oil, garlic puree, thyme and black pepper. Waitrose says the bones are simmered for 14 hours to extract maximum flavor, and you can taste it. Bone marrow adds a richness and unctuousness that you just can't get from standard stock. The Cabernet Sauvignon is a proper wine, not cooking wine, and 9% is a significant amount. The salt content is 1 gram per 100 grams, which is perfectly reasonable. This is what gravy is supposed to point toward. It's the opposite of Bisto traditional in every possible way. Where Bisto is powder and palm fat, this is bone stock and wine. Where Bisto is engineered flavor, this is ingredients doing what they naturally do. It costs more, obviously. You're paying around £4 to £5 for a pot versus £1 for Bisto granules. But you're getting actual food, not a chemistry experiment. If you want to know what the difference tastes like between real gravy and factory powder, buy this and compare it side by side with anything in the avoid list. It'll change how you think about gravy forever. The reality is that most people have forgotten what real gravy tastes like because they've been eating powder and chemicals for so long that it's become the baseline. Bisto traditional isn't traditional at all. It's a modern industrial product that's hijacked the language of heritage to sell you something fundamentally different from what your grandparents made. But you don't have to accept it. You've got options in the chilled section that are genuinely closer to the real thing. And if you've got a roasting tin and 15 minutes, you can make it yourself, and it'll be better than anything you can buy. The corporations behind these products are counting on you not reading the labels, not questioning why beef gravy only contains 1% beef, not noticing that the formula has changed over the years. They're counting on brand loyalty and nostalgia to keep you buying the same products your parents bought, even though those products aren't the same anymore. But now you know. Now you've seen the ingredient lists, the percentages, the formulas designed to maximize profit and minimize cost. And once you know, you can't unknow it. So hit that hype button one more time if this opened your eyes. Leave a comment and tell me what food we should investigate next, because I'm going to keep doing these videos until people start demanding better. Until next time, read your labels, trust your taste buds, and protect your plate.